countries have not accepted or enforced it. Similarly, Sharia auditing has a long way to go. So this lecture is about, the contents are not much different, but I want to re-emphasize the focus on this topic today, because we have a long and far challenge ahead, a lot of challenges ahead, and unless we do something, we are not going to achieve the maqasid sharia of Islamic finance, because I fear that the capitalist society will take over or kidnap the Islamic finance movement. What we are going to touch on today, firstly, is the reason why auditing and accounting needs to be redefined. Okay? What are the existing and proposed definitions of these disciplines? And we will be looking at some of the existing standards, both for accounting and both from AOFI and ISB. And just to show the consequences of applying different standards, we will see the consequences of the annual reports or the financial statements which comes out from these standards. Then we go on to the Sharia auditing. What is the state of Sharia auditing today? Coming out from research in Malaysia and looking at the Sharia reports from all over the world. Okay, and we look at the issue in a single part of Sharia auditing, i.e. Sharia report, will be highlighted for you, and then we'll take question and answers before we finish, inshallah. Okay. Let's go back to the original maqasid, or the objective of developing Islamic socio-economic organizations. I mean the modern ones or contemporary ones. For example, the contemporarizing, I don't like to call it modernizing because it has philosophical, Euro-philosophical, it has philosophical intonation, so we don't want to do that. Okay, so I would like to call it contemporarization as opposed to modernization. So when we contemporize these Islamic socio-economic institutions like zakah, awqaf, and Islamic banks are new creatures, but they came from Baitul Mal and so on. So what did we want to do? Of course, we wanted to get rid of riba, but there is more than that. Because there is a reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want riba. It's just not because He didn't like the term riba. So it is to achieve the maqasid sharia objectives of removing the riba and the other prohibitions like gharar and maisir and so on. So our objective actually is, I think, Umar Chapra has put it very nicely in his by displaying the ayat of the Quran. لَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا رُسْلًا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمْ كِتَابَ الْمِيزَانِ لِلنَّاسِ بِالْقِسْطِ. So the whole idea of revelations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to achieve social justice. Okay, and this economic or social, I would like to call it socio-economic institutions, they have been established to achieve this. Okay, and they achieve this social justice through a need fulfillment. This is Chapra's words: need fulfillment, equitable earnings, dignity of the Khalifa, and less concentration of wealth. Okay, and they achieve this while operating within the bounds of the Sharia. Now let's go back to accounting and auditing. These are basically tools to provide information and to measure performance against certain criteria. Okay, they give us information on what has gone on, okay, or how things are going on compared with a standard or budget or whatever. Okay, now if you look at the modern accounting and auditing, they have been developed in an environment, mainly Europe and the US, where materialistic values, okay, are rampant, and where financial objectives are emphasized for financial values. This is in line with the what they our objective when
اتصل فيها
go inside.
بس don't worry يعني كله مشاركين مع دمر
New definition of accounting. Okay. This is the definition given here. Accounting is defined as the process of identifying, classifying, measuring, recording, summarizing, and reporting and interpreting events. So, this process results in financial statements, and these are given to mainly finance providers, i.e., the shareholders of institutions, as well as creditors who are mainly the ribawi banks, basically. Alright? And we are told by the accounting profession that the whole objective of financial accounting is to provide information so that shareholders can make decision as to whether to buy, sell, or hold their shares. Okay? And the ultimate objective, they say, is by doing this, they will allocate the scarce resources to the most efficient use, resulting in social welfare. That's what they say. Now, my thesis basically is we have to align the accounting and auditing system, the contemporary ones which are prepared under a different worldview, to be inconsistent. We have to refine them to be inconsistent with our own value system, which is the Maqasid al-Sharia. Okay? So this diagram here, if you can see, is we start with the socio-objective, economic objectives of the Sharia. Sorry, the numbering is wrong, I think. Okay? So then we go down. Okay. So socio-economic objectives of the Sharia. Then we have from these objectives, we develop Islamic economic system and financial system. Well, we are not there yet, but partly we try to do it by creating, say, Islamic banks or Awqaf or something. And we establish these institutions. Then, if we use Islamic accounting which are consistent with our Maqasid Sharia values, then the information which come out of this accounting system will be consistent in line with the worldview, and the decision make from the information coming out from the financial statements will be in line with Islamic norms. However, if instead of using the correct type of accounting, which I call it Islamic accounting, then if we use the normal accounting, conventional accounting it is called, which is based on secular philosophical values, which are inconsistent with the Islamic ideals and values, what will happen is the decision makers, whether they are lenders or shareholders, will go for more financial returns as opposed to Maqasid Sharia returns. Therefore, they will actually empower the directors to go and chase the financial goals only, and therefore at the end of the day we will convert the Islamic institutions like Islamic banks or Awqaf into capitalist institutions, and we will lose this objective of Maqasid Sharia. Okay? So then it will result in inconsistent or deviant decision making of Muslim users if the wrong information system is used. So I have proposed a new definition of accounting or Islamic accounting, which is a process which provides appropriate information, and this information not necessarily limited to financial data, to stakeholders, not only shareholders or finance providers, to the stakeholders of an entity, and which will enable to ensure that the entity is continuously operating within the bounds of the Sharia and also delivering on the socio-economic objectives of the Maqasid of Sharia. Now, to a certain extent, if you go to AOFI has in its financial accounting concept standard, it has come out with the information requirements needed from an Islamic perspective. So the first information requirement coming out from accounting reports or financial statements, or I would like to call it accounting reports, is the information which we can use to assess or evaluate whether the bank is complying with the Sharia in all its financial and other dealings. That should be the main objective of Islamic accounting. Alright? And the other objectives are similar but not the same. Okay, using the economic resources effectively. Okay, increasing the value but not maximizing value, increasing value at reasonable rates of return, not necessary to have maximum rates of return. Okay, carrying out, we need information to assess whether the Islamic bank is carrying out its social responsibilities, and in particular those that have been specified by Islam, including the use of available resources, protection of the rights of others, and prevention of fasad fil ard, or corruption on the earth. Of course, providing for the economic needs of those who deal with the bank and maintaining liquidity. These are all normal financial objectives. Besides this, we also need information for employees of the bank in evaluating whether their relationship and future with the bank, including its ability to safeguard and develop their rights and their managerial and productive skills and capability. So, the AOP has suggested 4 types of reports. Analytical financial reports about sources of funds for zakat and their users. And this report, they have come out with a standard for this report, but it has its own problems, which we might be able to discuss if we have time. Alright, then financial reports about earnings and expenditure prohibited by the Sharia. Now, AOP has not produced a standard on this report, okay, prohibited, but they are supposed to disclose any amount which is haram, which is earned by the bank. And reports concerning the Islamic bank's fulfillment of its social responsibilities. Alhamdulillah, AOP has come out with a detailed disclosure standard on social responsibility disclosures. It is very, very comprehensive standard, I would say. Unfortunately, it is not compulsory, and not many banks are implementing it yet. But at least it gives us a framework on how to go about getting this thing. Okay, and this also has a consequence for Islamic auditing or Sharia auditing. And finally, AOP has suggested the bank should also supply reports about the development of the Islamic bank's human resources, i.e. the training and development of the bank's employees. Okay, these are the objectives of Islamic financial accounting as given by AOP, to determine the rights and obligation of all interested parties in accordance with the principles of the Sharia and its concept of fairness, charity, and compliance with Islamic business values. Now, it is interesting to note that the International Accounting Standards Board, in its latest conceptual framework, has moved from a risk and reward approach to rights and obligation approach. Unfortunately, the rights and obligation approach by the International Accounting Standards Boards is actually the rights and obligation as defined by the contract which the parties make under maybe a common law or the European Civil Code or whatever, okay? And it's not in accordance with the Sharia principles of contract. But maybe they're getting there. Alright? And the other objectives are more in line with the normal conventional objectives of safeguarding the bank's assets, okay, contributing to managerial productive capabilities of the Islamic bank, okay, and to provide useful information to users to enable them to make legitimate decisions in their dealings with Islamic banks. Okay, so what are the information required by the Islamic users? Alright, of course they need information about Islamic bank's compliance with Sharia standards, its objectives, And also it needs information whether the bank has complied with the Sharia.